Welcome to the Millennial and a Boomer Walk into a Coffee Bar podcast.
The very best podcast to get your life advice in the form of a grande caramel macchiato in a venti cup, 1/3 whole milk, 1/3 almond milk, 1/3 soy milk, double the amount of vanilla syrup, caramel wall in the cup, no caramel drizzle on top, upside down, of course, tall ice cup, whipped cream, rounded lid, one shot extra espresso, decaf, cinnamon sprinkled on the top, and for the name, that's David, spelled Dafydd, please.
Or to get your business, finance, and life support black coffee advice, I'm Dan, I'm a Boomer.
And I'm Chase, the Millennial. Thanks for joining us today.
It's good to have you all back. We're excited. This time we're doing a little bit remote, which is kind of unusual for me, and it takes me a while to catch up. The Millennial, he could hook right up, and let me tell you something, my audio wasn't working. And so finally I did a couple of things, and then I said, can you hear me now? And Chase goes like this. And I'm like, oh, I can't believe this. He says, I'm just kidding, like a joke on the old Boomer. So thank you, Chase, and welcome to the 21st century. Maybe it's the 22nd century, I don't know, but we're back on BAM. It's good to be with you.
We are back. We are so back, baby. We're glad to be here. And for those of you who are listening to the Apple version, when he said Chase was doing this, he was moving his mouth up and down as if he were saying something, but not actually saying something. So I felt pretty good about that one. It was a good way to alleviate some of the 13-minute delay in recording as we got the audio and video set up.
It breaks the tension. So, well, let's jump right into it. We've been talking about personal finances, and I will say I've enjoyed this probably the most. Actually, I've learned from this, and we got some really good stuff coming up in the next couple of episodes. But we talked about building a budget last week. We talked about a couple of other things, but differences between millennials and boomers with finances. And I kind of want to go there a little bit more maybe on this one. And to jump right in to start off, if you're building a budget, you also ought to build an emergency fund. And I know that's true with boomers, and I don't know how well we do it, but I think we understand it and we know that it needs to be done. Where do millennials fit in on the necessity to have an emergency fund, emergency savings fund?
That's a good question. It's a tricky answer. Similar to boomers, right? You are not the same as every boomer out there. There are different categories, and some are better with money and some are worse with money. Yeah. And the same holds true with millennials. Some are really good with money and some are really bad with money. And so answering from a millennial perspective, how do we feel about emergency funds? Well, I think there's a good chunk of us who see the value and do it, but I think we probably have a different perspective on money in that kind of look at where we came from. Most of us were born in the, mid 80s through like the mid 90s roughly. Yeah. And we graduated from college, many of us, during the recession in 2008, roughly, right? That's during our kind of first job post-college. And I think that turned off a lot of millennials from just even thinking about money at all, because we saw our parents lose thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in the stock market. We saw them get laid off from jobs that they had. We saw them lose houses. And that's all, kind of our first experience as an adult. And then you pair that with, and I know we've talked about that before, we grew up with parents and grandparents saying, go to school, get a college degree, and you can be anything you want to be. And now we've got our college degree and we're hitting this job market where there's no jobs available. And it's not only can we not be anything we want to be, but we can't even be something because there's no jobs available out there. And so it really disenfranchised a lot of millennials, specifically the elder millennials, on just money in general. And so the idea of a emergency fund, I would say, has been foreign to a lot of millennials, elder millennials, up until recently. And I think that the next crazy cycle that we went through in 2020 kind of woke a bunch of us up and realized, oh man, what happens if my job disappears tomorrow? Do I have enough money to survive without my Trump Bucks or Joe Bucks or whatever we're going to call them. But, if no one's going to come in and step in and save us, what do we do?
Well, good, because you came to the right episode, because these finance episodes are the one that I'll teach you a few things from a boomer point of view. And I did want to point out one thing that you said: you woke up, and that could be a play on words, but nonetheless, you need to establish an emergency fund. Boomers, if you don't have an emergency fund, you need to establish an emergency fund, because it will have big payoffs later. And it will help you when your car breaks down, when your house breaks down, when you have an urgent repair that needs to be done, or when you have a serious illness, or even to the extent you touched on it a little bit, unemployment. The emergency fund is an important thing to have. And so I think let's spend just a little bit of time to talk about that. How long should an emergency fund last you? What do you think on that time frame?
Well, I think there's really two schools of thought that we've brought up here. There's the Dave Ramsey version, and then there's the Larry Burkett version. Yeah, so let's start with the Dave Ramsey while I try to remember what Larry Burkett calls it. But Dave Ramsey says start with $1,000. That's your first thing. Before you do anything else financially, set up a budget and save $1,000. That's it. Because that $1,000 will then, when your car breaks down and you have to pay $350 to get something fixed, now you're paying cash for it as opposed to putting it back on a credit card. But then you go, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 baby steps further, and he says 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. And I found that really interesting when I was kind of digging in on some of that, because living expenses is not the same as what you're currently paying for right now.
Right.
A living expense is paying my mortgage, putting food on the table, and taking care of basic needs. That doesn't include the Starbucks run. That doesn't include going out to eat. I need 6 months of, if I cut out everything frivolous, and I survive for 6 months or 3 months, depending on, that where you feel comfortable. For us, Stephanie and I, we've got 6 months of living expenses in our emergency fund. But, I don't know if there's a hard, fast rule. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think regardless of how long, you ought to take a Saturday afternoon and sit down and say, what are my expenses? And you can get a lot of that from your budget. What are my housing expenses? But go a little bit beyond just housing. What about my property taxes? Not just rent or mortgage. What about my insurance? What about my utilities? And then you had mentioned it too, the food. Estimate your monthly food expense and include that cost in your emergency fund. Save money on food by reducing your food expenses. Let me point one thing out right now. When you're hungry and you're on a tight budget and you need to break into your emergency fund, cut back on dining out. I swear Americans are crazy. This is my first boomerism that I'm going to come out and say, knock it off. Eat at home. Go to the grocery store and buy your groceries. Build your own shopping list around sale items too. And then here's my second boomer thing: use coupons. Use coupons. Cut coupons and use coupons. So first of all, Is
there an app for that? That's what I want to know. Is there an app for coupons?
There probably is. And if there's not, maybe I know a millennial that's listening to us that could develop one and be the next $100 billion sell my app and become the CEO type deal. But seriously, the thing you need to look at is whether it's $1,000, and that's probably a good place to start, because when you're strapped for cash already and someone says, hey, you need 3 months or 6 months, you're going to get glassy eyed and say, it's helpless. I can't do it. But if you saved $1,000 for the emergency cares, but you also ought to consider, if you get laid off of your job, what are my insurance costs? What's my debt repayment? What's transportation if you have to have, some vehicle to get you back and forth, and then personal expenses as well, costs related to things like household supplies, haircuts. My haircut's pretty cheap, but it's getting more expensive. Clothes and generally the inexpensive things that can add up. So do a little bit of understanding of what your expenses are in a little bit more specific way, and try to target that maybe for 3 months. And I guarantee you it's probably a lot more than $1,000.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think there's an important piece to call out between your $1,000 and then however much you end up with 3 to 6 months. The thing that happens between those two is paying off all your debt. So you don't even need to consider starting to get your 3 to 6 months until you're completely debt free.
Yeah.
Outside of your house, right? Outside of your mortgage. So.
Well, I hope I'm going to tug on that a little bit. I hope what you're saying is you can start your savings fund when you're in debt, because you need to have at least a small emergency fund like that $1,000. But don't try to make that 6 months if you're in debt and paying credit card bills and things like that.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And the other, I'm going to add one more piece, as you kind of mentioned before, to go to the store and buy your food. You can do it a lot cheaper, right? To buy. Here's my only advice. Here's my millennial advice, if I can give millennialism. Do not go to the grocery store hungry.
Yeah.
Eat something first and then go to the grocery store, because I promise you'll buy less when you're not hungry.
That's funny you say that, because just last night I went grocery shopping, and I walk in the store and the first thing that there is a sushi bar. And I'm like, oh, sushi would be good for dinner, but I already got dinner planned, but the sushi still sounds good. And there I am grabbing a thing of sushi, and you can't wait a week to eat that. You got to devour it right off. So don't go hungry. Also, have a list, have a specific list. And I'm serious about these looking at sale items. A lot of the grocery stores have it broken down to per ounce. So if you look at the jumbo pack or you look at the small pack, it's usually broken down by, hey, if you buy the jumbo pack, it's 29 cents an ounce. If you buy the other one, it's 35 cents an ounce. And I'm not saying go crazy, but be responsible in your shopping and your spending. I think it's very important.
Yeah, I think one last piece I'll add on the shopping piece. If you want to figure out a really quick and easy way to figure out what's cheap to eat, look for something that has God's packaging.
That's probably good advice. Like a banana.
Like a banana. It's got its own packaging. It's built in, as opposed to finding something in a box or a bag. Anything that is for the beans. Okay, they might come in a bag, but beans are cheap. Potatoes are cheap. Fruit and veggies are cheap. And you can do that and still get some really good meats on sale and have a great meal.
Yeah. And it just takes a little bit of practice, and it really just takes a little bit of discipline. But first of all, let's set up our savings plan. It's pretty easy to get started, right? It really is. In today's world, the millennials brought this into the world, and that's that automatic transfer, where you write on your paycheck, hey, to this account, I want $100 to go or $50 to go. Or even better, if you get a tax refund, everybody's like, oh, I get a tax refund, I'm going to go spend it on something. No, that's a great place to start your savings plan, your whatever, it's a regular savings plan. Emergency fund. There you go. And even if you get a holiday bonus or something, but then automatic transfer, pay yourself small amount. It could even be $5. It could be $50. Pay yourself first and build up this emergency fund.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. If you can set it up to where you don't have to think about it and it happens first, now you're figuring out how to work with what's left, as opposed to figuring out how to work in that money. I will say, personally, we like to transfer. I don't know. It's like a mental thing for us. We like to physically transfer, and we still pay ourselves first. But there's just something really satisfying about transferring that money into your own savings account. And so I think we do it by a manual. But if you're not good at making sure to pay yourself first, automate it and make it as easy as possible.
Yeah.
And then the other piece is where you're putting it. I think there's an important point here. Don't put it somewhere where it's hard to get to.
Right.
Because this is your emergency fund. And if there's an emergency, you need to be able to get to it quickly.
Right.
And so it's not necessarily about how do I maximize my return. And you should want to maximize it to the best of your ability, but not to the point where it takes a day or two to get that money out. It needs to be something where I can hit an ATM up or quickly transfer it to a checking account and use that money within 15 minutes.
Right. And we started off this discussion a couple episodes back about a regular savings account or a money market account. Look and be wise on where you're putting it. But like you said, just make sure you can access if an emergency happens. So, but anyway, let's get back to budgets. That was free. That one, our sponsors didn't pay us anything for that thing, nor do they pay us anything for anything. But let's go back to this budget thing, because I think we kind of left it hanging. And on the budgets, if your budget runs out of money before your bills do, save money. It's easier than you think. What are the two ways that you can actually balance your budget?
Well, these are really complicated ways. They're super hard, and the average person just won't be able to pick them up. Let me tell you what they are. Make more or spend less.
Boy,
wait,
those are
really
complicated. Where are we going with that? Because that's pretty scientific and rocket science and all that stuff. But I'll tell you what, it is pretty complicated when people say, yeah, tell me how I'm going to make more money. The only way I can make more money is to find a better paying job. You want me to quit my job and go, first of all, don't ever quit a job before you have another one in the bank to go to. Don't ever do that.
Oh, true.
But we're not saying go find a better paying job. There's a lot of other ways to make more money. Let's touch on a couple of those.
Well, obviously, if you could find a better paying job, go for it. However, if that's not the best option and the easiest option for you right now, let's talk about this. Maybe you start with simply asking for a raise. If you're someone who's listening to our podcast, you're probably not the dummy that doesn't care about money, doesn't care about your job. You're not, taking life by the horns, if you will. If you're doing good work at work, go ask for a raise. You may or may not get it, but there's only one way to find out. So ask for a raise.
Secondly, you won't get it if you don't ask, that's for sure.
What's our second option here?
Well, wait a second. I just want to go a little bit, because here's another boomer millennial difference, I think, is you got to do a good job to get a raise. And I'm not saying that millennials don't do a good job, but be engaged and involved in your job. And what do you think are millennials? You can't work for 1 week and then go in and say, hey, I deserve a job or a raise. And I'm just, that's my experience with some of the millennials in the business world, are they're pretty anxious to get the corner office and the raise. So earn yourself that raise. Do you agree with that, or am I out of line a little bit?
No, I think you're right. I'll tell you a funny story. When I first went into the education world, I'm a young 20-something-year-old punk, and I had just started, first week on the job. I didn't know who any of the people were. I didn't know who was in all these offices around me. But I walked past one office, and there was a lady sitting in there, and she's typing away on her little MacBook. And the rest of us were all stuck with PCs. And so I stuck my head in and I said, hey, what's a man got to do to get a Mac around here? And she kind of was typing, and she looked up and she goes, you got to be here longer than a week. And then she went back and kept typing. And you know what? It took me 2.5 years before I worked up enough to get that MacBook.
Yep. And that's kind of, I'm going to say it, and we're going to lose millennial and maybe gain boomers, so it doesn't really matter. But what does it take for me to get? What does it take? It takes good hard work, right? And a lot of the millennials, and maybe it's just my perception, but go in there and really work your tail off and be deserving of that raise. And don't be shy, ask for it, right? But be reasonable in what you're asking for. But anyway, there's a couple of other things that you can do to make more money. And that is get a side hustle, get an extra job, babysit, garden, cut lawns. Like I was telling you about one of my great friends. He actually started a paper out. He was an executive in the aerospace world, and he needed money for a down payment. He got a paper route. He got a paper route and threw papers for years and years and years. So a side hustle, an extra job would make more income for your budget.
Yeah, and we have never lived in a time, except for our listeners in California, we have never lived in a time with more opportunity for side hustles that can make actual money.
Right.
Like, it's so easy. You can just go sign up for the Uber app and drive people around and make money. You can sign up to do something on Fiverr. Do you even know what Fiverr is? This is a great question. Does the boomer know what Fiverr is?
I have no clue. Fiber? That's what I eat in my mucilix every morning for breakfast.
Isn't mucilix the congestion medicine.
That's
that's Mucinex.
Mucinex. I use that on occasions too. Don't confuse my Mucinex with my Mucilex.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. But so Fiverr is this website where if you're good at something, for instance, video editing, content layout, image editing, like all these different things, it's anything and everything. You're a good script writer, you're a good whatever. People can go to Fiverr and say, I used it. When we launched our business, I used Fiverr to have someone design a logo for me. And if I would have gone to a firm, the firm would have charged hundreds of dollars for this logo. I went to Fiverr and had some high school kid probably that got home from football practice and designed a logo for our company for like $45.
Yeah.
And he did it in like a half hour probably. And so you have never lived in a world where it's as easy as it is today to find an extra job or a side hustle.
Yep. Yep. And that's a good way to bring your balance sheet back in balance if you're underwater. One of the other things it is, and it's been very easy in the last probably 5 or 7 years, is sell things you don't need or the things you don't use. There's all kinds of websites that you can go on. There's people that's their part-time job or even maybe full-time job is selling things that you just don't use anymore or that you don't need.
Yeah, I got to tell you, this is a great story. And it's not a millennial; it's a Gen Z.
Boom.
Gen Z.
Oh, Gen Z.
Gen Z. And you know what his side hustle is right now? He looks on places like Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist and these different places and finds golf carts that no longer work. And people are like, hey, $500, you can have this golf cart. And he buys a golf cart, flips it. It's usually something simple like I just need a new battery or something. And so he flips it and cleans it up really nice. He bought one the other day for $1,500. It's a 2019, a used golf cart, $1,500. He cleaned it up, fixed the battery, $7,000 he sold it for.
Wow.
That's for one weekend of work. That's amazing.
Yeah. So the environment is rich for side hustles or sell things you don't need or buy things and sell things and flip things. So the other thing is, this is interesting. And I was just talking to your kids the other day, but I have a Coke bottle that stands about like that with a little slit in the top, and I throw my change in there. And you're going to get the Coke bottle. And
I'm getting
this is the second time that I've filled up this Coke bottle. But I told my granddaughters, if you want to wrap and get those coins and put them in containers and go cash them in, go do it. And they got $30 each for 4 of them. And I would suspect that there's probably about $20 to $25 per kid right there. It's just save your change and cash it in. Yep. Now, in this particular case, I know your son has had a goal that might help him with his goal. But you can actually supplement your income by digging in couch cushions, looking in your car console, doing all these other things, and it will cash in. So a simple thing that can make you money. And if you see a coin, pick it up. On the ground, pick it up. If it's a penny, pick it up.
If it's a Canadian nickel, pick it up.
A wooden nickel. So, and then the last one that I think we could touch on, to make more money. Remember, we're trying to add to the balance sheet on the positive side, is ask for money or gift cards on holidays or birthdays. Don't be presumptuous about it, and don't be, a turkey about it. But there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, could I get money, or a gift card might be a better and more appropriate thing. It adds up. We've added up with you kids and your grandkids. Every holiday, we give you guys money, and we actually direct deposit or transfer it to your account. And I mean, it's totaled up into, I think, the thousands of dollars for each one of the kids, right? With the contributions that you guys make too.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And asking for money, it can be uncomfortable sometimes. I found that if you're uncomfortable asking for straight cash, what is it that you're trying to save up for, and ask for the gift card from there? And one thing that my wife loves is this place called the Food Nanny, and it's in Salt Lake City. It's ridiculous. They don't just sell flour, they sell French flour picked at the prime of its, whatever, and the gluten content and all this ridiculous stuff. And so what did she get? She got a Food Nanny gift card, And she was ecstatic about it because she was saving up to buy 742 pounds of expensive flour. I mean, you can ask for that, and that's okay.
Yep. Let me just close this one out too, is write a thank you note. When you get something, cash or a gift card, say thank you. I really appreciate that. I would say not a text. I know you would say a text. I would say not an email. I know you would say a text. But a handwritten card goes a long way, delivered by snail mail. So that's the old school advice. You may do it differently, but be appreciative for the things that you ask for, especially if it's money or gift cards or cash, right? So anyway, now the flip side of that, with your rocket science delivery of make more money, here's a couple of things to spend less money.
Can I lay this out really quick before we jump into what those items are? This one, you lose a lot of people on spend less. And I want to make a big, huge disclaimer right here. It's okay to not listen to culture all around you that says you have to have all these things. It's okay to cut some of these things out of your life, even if you're just cutting it out for a small part of the time, right? We're not asking you to cut them out forever. No, let's cut them out, get things back in order. And then if you want them, go ahead and add them back in. That's a perfectly acceptable way to do this. But do not let the crazy culture in which we live make your decisions for you.
That's a great idea, and I'm going to do something I haven't really done, but I think we should end this episode here and bring the next one on board about spending less, because there's a lot of things that we can discuss with that. What do you think of that? I mean, we're going on and on, blah, 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 blah. Would it be advantageous to cut this into 2 episodes? Or your editor could do that live and just make it happen, right?
Whoa, boom, we're done. All right. No, we got to end it properly, though. We have to end it properly. Just because it's different
does not absolutely mean it's wrong.